Great to be back in the land of Cleve. So you guys seem like a smart crowd. I'm kind of sensing it. I can smell it. There's some intellect running through here. It could just be my deodorant. I don't know. So I'm going to give you 3 little scenarios, and you tell me. So your quiz is somebody has to shout out when I tell you to. What do these 3 things have in common? Okay, first, dumb joke. Here's a dumb joke. So it's a slave galley ship. You know, they're like, just like moving the oars all day long, just horrible life. And the drummers are, you know, giving them the rhythm. And this one afternoon, the first mate comes down. He goes, stop the drum. And these guys are, oh, finally a breather. He goes, listen, guys, I've got good news and I've got bad news for you. I'm like, what's the good news? You're all going to have steak dinner tonight. Like, yeah! But some guy in the back, wait, what's the bad news? He's like, yeah, that's the thing. Captain wants to go water skiing this afternoon. I gave you fair warning. Did I say it was a clever joke? Anyway, what?
Tidy him up here a little bit.
I don't feel safe. Thank you. Me Too movement. Okay, so, anyway. All right, so that's the first one. Second one is my friend Mark Imboden. He's a worship leader. You might, anyway, doesn't matter. But he was the youngest kid in like 5 boys, so hijinks ensue. So like a lot of the kids, he was like 6 years old, and he woke up way before everyone else, like 6 o'clock in the morning, and he's tinkering on his little junior science kit that he had, and he had this homemade battery, and he was experimenting, hooking it at these little tiny jumper cables, you know. And he's like, what else could I hook it up to? And he looks over at his brother, who's in the same bed with him, and his brother's wearing one of those night braces, you know. And he's like, I wonder what would happen. So he goes over to the side of his, sneaks up on him and hooks those little jumper cables up to the night braces. And he said there was about a 3-second pause until suddenly, screaming, my mouth is on fire! My mouth is on fire! And his parents come tumbling, ricocheting down the hallway, like bed sheets are flying around. What's going on? My mouth is on fire! And they finally figure out the problem is this wire is connected to this giggling little 6-year-old who's still laughing, not for much longer. He found out, it's the vagaries of science, people. He found out that there was a part of his body that was then on fire shortly thereafter. Back in the day, man. Yeah. Anyway, okay, so good times. So third one. This is from one of my favorite comedians, Stephen Wright. No, unappreciated. I weep for this generation. Anyway, but he would just do these really dry one-liners, and you had to think about him for a little bit. But he said, I rented a new place recently, and I walked in checking out, all the corners and spaces, and I noticed there was a light switch by the front door. You walk in the front door, and I would flick the switch, and nothing would happen. He would look for any lights to come on, nothing. So he said, I guess it doesn't do anything. So he said, every day I would come home when I'd open the front door, and I would, just for fun, go tick, 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 flick the switch and not think anything more about it. He said, until about 6 months later, I got a letter from some lady in Germany. It said, knock it off. As I said, it has to kind of settle over you. Okay, so let's see if you guys can beat first service. What's the commonality? What's the 3? The water skiing. Cap wants to go water skiing. My mouth is on fire. Lady in Germany. You have the same grade. What were you going to say? Okay, consequences. I'll take anything at this point, sure. They are all consequences, yes. They involved humans. Okay, also many things true. No, what it is someone's having fun at someone else's expense. And actually, there's a thin line connecting both the water skiing captain and the wires to the braces and the lady in Germany, who, if you haven't figured out by now, mysteriously, no scientific explanation. His wire to his switch somehow connected to this lady in Germany, and every time he did that, something would turn on, if I have to spell that one out for you. Okay. And apparently I do. So, all right. But anyway, that's the thing. So someone's out, but I'm having fun over here. Yeah, but someone else, if you follow that chord, on the other side, someone is suffering, you see. And this is kind of a nice summary of sin, isn't it? In fact, as if it were planned. Sin is your fun connected to someone else's pain. Sometimes the Bible can be complicated. Sometimes it's really simple. Here's one of those. Your fun is connected to someone else's pain. Now, here's where humans butt heads with God, which is a bad idea. But we say, yeah, but I don't see where my fun does connect to someone else's pain. And God says, well, I am the supreme being. Consider that I might have an edge on you. Consider that. And we don't. And so there's some place, and for you this morning, if you've ever said, and I think we all have said, I'm like, okay, I get, yeah, of course, don't murder people, and yeah, don't do that. And I realize but I just don't see what the big deal is with this one. This one I don't get. First of all, expect that you will come to verses like that. You will come to verses that say, yeah, I don't really get this one. Because you're dealing with an IQ that is quadrillion times higher than yours, it's possible his ideas don't match yours all the time. I don't know why that baffles us. I haven't figured out God did something baffling to me. Of course he did something baffling. He's the creator of the universe. Well, did you think everything would make sense to you? But we all come to that, and I certainly have come to that. I'm like, I just don't see what the big deal is. So if you've ever said, I don't see what the big deal is, this is the story for you. This is King David. This is the Meltdown series, right? Did I get that right? So we're big heroes. So David, there's some good candidates in there. David made some jaw-dropping bad decisions. But this appeared, consequence-wise, this was the biggest one. Now, you may remember a lady named Bathsheba in the David history. Remember that one? Her name was Sheba originally, and then after this story, they just nicknamed her Bathsheba. True story. Because she was up on the roof taking a bath. Really? You had no idea you'd be visible from the palace? Another story. All right. And David sees her. Oh, yeah, daddy likey. And so David has her. Oh, she's somebody's wife. Yeah, get rid of the husband. Yeah, have him killed. And somehow thought that was a good idea. So God, and he just is so penitent before the Lord. And God's, okay, fine, you're forgiven. And David moved on from that. That was not apparently his biggest meltdown. Baffling though that be, I had an affair with this lady. By the way, my third or fourth wife. So you weren't hurting, dude. Okay. And then I have her husband killed. It seemed like that would be the big one. But as far as consequences go, this is late in David's life. We're going to tune in to Chronicles. And there it is. So David's like an old man now. And he's been done, because he's always been a military guy, like so proud of his military prowess. And he was just an absolute champion soldier on the field. Of course, there was Goliath on his resume. But David just keeps wondering. I'll back up the story a little. David just keeps wondering, I would love to know, if push came to shove, how many soldiers do we really have? I mean, some of these, these outlying kingdoms, man, they're kind of getting cheeky. I wonder, but God had commanded, God had given David a command. So we tune in. Satan rose up against Israel and incited David to take a census of Israel. A census. You're having trouble getting worked up over that, aren't you? Yeah, so what's the... All we can tell you is God had commands for census. I can commission a census, God said. You cannot, especially when you are an ego-inflated king who would love to know how many soldiers you have at your disposal. You really can't. So God had given instructions. Because, is this really it? It's about the census. It's about the census. So David said to Joab, his flunky sidekick, Joab and the commanders of the troops, go and count the Israelites from Beersheba in the south to Dan in the north. Then that's so Dan doesn't get credit for that one. So then report back to me so that I may know how many there are. Now, Joab, up to this point, is kind of just this mindless hatchet man. Yeah, whatever you say, boss, sure. But Joab is starting to put up some resistance here. And to quote Home Alone, if Uncle Frank thinks it's bad, it's got to be bad. So if Joab's kicking up resistance, so Joab replies, may the Lord multiply his troops 100 times over my lord the king. Kiss, 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 kiss. Are they not all my lord's subjects? Why does my lord want to do this? Why should he bring guilt on Israel? Like David, take note, Joab, who has trouble sprouting a conscience on the best of days, is having trouble with this one. That might be a red light. The king's word, however, overruled. Isn't that the story all the time? King's word, however, overruled Joab. So Joab, okay, fine. Have it your way. And they went throughout Israel, and they came back to Jerusalem, and he reported, better than David could have expected. Our next slide. David never anticipated our next slide. Joab reported the number of the fighting men to David. In all Israel, there were 1,100,000 men who could handle a sword. That's using the widest possible definition of man there, including 470,000 in Judah alone. So, wow. So God's like, this is what I was talking about. Because now what's starting to happen in David's mind? Like, oh, I have 1.1 million soldiers. That's large by 2023 standards, people. And this is Israel. Now that David has expanded the borders of Israel, like, oh, wow. Oh, the things I could do. Now there's this gleeful little boy who's got some new toys, who really desperately wants to use those toys. So God's like, okay, fine. So David finds out, I'll jump ahead a little bit. David finds out, you have greatly displeased God. He's not happy. So David says to God, and I'll try to do as the tone as I read it. I have sinned greatly by doing this thing, yeah. Oh, you know me. I'm naughty sometimes. Now I beg you, take away the guilt of your servant. I've done a very foolish thing. I think he actually literally did that at the end. It's just a cute little sin. And God's sick to death of the cute little sins, isn't he? I think in general. But he's certainly sick of it with David. So you wonder the big, huge consequence that's about to happen, and you think, whoa, that's kind of overdoing it. Are we overplaying our hand a little bit? But here's a little formula for you, and I wish I had this on a slide. But it's like little sin plus you should know better by now. So like little sin plus you've been a Christian for like 40 years. Come on. Equals big sin. So that's the equation running behind this story with David. It's like, come on, I counted something. It's like an episode of Sesame Street. 1 soldier, 2 soldier. What could go wrong? Come on. It's a number, God. What's the big deal? And God's sick to death of hearing, I don't see what the big deal is. So David, it's high time I show you what the big deal is. So the prophet Gad goes and tells David, this is what the Lord says. I'm giving you 3 options. Oh, multiple choice. You're not going to like this. Choose one of them for me to carry out against you. So Gad, that should be Gad, the prophet Gad. Gad went to David and said to him, this is what the Lord says. Take your choice. Number 1 choice, 3 years of famine. Ooh, that's yucky. Number 2, 3 months of being swept away before your enemies with their swords overtaking you. Military failure. Yeah, like he's going to pick that one. Like that's my pride. Yeah, that's the whole problem here. Or 3 days of plague in the land with the angel of the Lord ravaging every part of Israel. Ooh, now the first 2, David I'm sure has experienced what famine looks like, and he knows what military loss. What's this third one? But it's only 3 days. The angel of the Lord with his sword. Like, yeah, I'm not sure about that. But David goes for, let's just get it over with. So he picks the 3. You decide. So the Lord sent a plague on Israel, and 70,000 men of Israel fell dead. Now, let's practice some presentism, as they call it. Let's apply the standards of 2023 to back then. Like, God, what is your problem? A little harsh. What did these guys do? What did these guys do that as David watches from the palace, and he's got to watch it? That's the key with all 3 of these things. You have to watch it. Watch, guy just falls over dead. We don't know if it was an actual angel. That's really creepy to think about. But whatever, like, ah, another guy dead. And David's like, oh, wow, for 3 days. In the night, while you're trying to sleep, David, you're hearing screams. Guys outside your home. You people, sick. Laughing at guys dropping. Palace staff dropping over, and David just got to sit there and take it knowing you did this. Now, if this makes you feel any better, what do you think an ego-engorged king will do with 1.1 million soldiers? He's going to commit to battle because he's so proud of his new toys. And how many, I think this conservatively, at least that many would die in battle. But for once, David's going to show you, this is what happens when you sin. Your sin is connected to someone else's suffering, and you're going to have to watch it. There was a brilliant punishment in medieval Germany for couples that were found, who weren't married yet, who were found doing the deed. And it was, the guy had to carry a wheelbarrow, and in the wheelbarrow was his girlfriend, or presumably, and he's got to walk through town. Okay, so far you're like, okay, that doesn't sound too bad. But everyone in the town is throwing stuff at them, anything they can find. So he's got to walk through the main drag street. People are whipping, apples at best, or, household appliances, and just like getting pelted. But the beauty of it is, both of you have to watch each other suffer. Sounds medieval, doesn't it? It was medieval. And so she's crying, no doubt this girl's like, oh my God, ow, that really hurt. And he's like, ow. And they're both, because that's what you don't realize when you do, especially sexual sins. Hey, nobody's getting hurt here. Really? Nobody's getting hurt? And that's what God has been hearing for thousands of years, us saying, hey, supreme being of the universe with an IQ quadrillion times higher than mine, I don't understand this one. Like, yeah? Did you think you would understand them all? Yeah, because I had AP classes. So I know some things. Oh, yeah, okay. And so everything should make sense to me. And this is like becoming a new epidemic in Christianity. We don't understand this, so we're going to eliminate it. Like, no, I would expect when you're dealing with the supreme being of the universe that some stuff is not going to make sense to you. Expect it. I'm surprised more of it doesn't make sense to us. So come to that. As Francis Chan says, I'll quote Francis Chan here, when I come to scriptures I don't like, I assume that I'm wrong. There's a good spot. Because you will, and I do. There's scriptures like, okay, I don't really get that one. I don't really like it. And like, that's okay. You don't have to. That's good news. I don't have to like it. But you still have to obey it because it's coming from God. So God has had just about his fill of David and his quick repentances and his quick sorries, Okay, God, sorry, I messed up again. And God just gets sick of that and is like, okay, you need to see what sin is all about. So there's a good working definition of sin. Sin is, I'm having fun, but somewhere down the line, someone else is suffering. Sometimes 20, 30 years down the line, someone else is suffering. And sometimes 20, 30 years down the line, I am the one who's going to suffer. Sometimes you are kicking the future you in the teeth. There's a picture for you. Some God's like, this is not going to, who's going to get hurt? Well, you are. When you're 46, you're going to like, why? Why did I start this stupid thing? And you're going to be the one. Okay, let me jump abruptly. It will appear abrupt to you. But it has, I'm circling back around, Vietnam War. Naturally. It's a natural segue from ancient Israeli wars into Vietnam. You're following, right? Okay. So here's some things about the Vietnam War that I didn't know until recently. First of all, the Vietnam War is known by the Pentagon. At the time, it was given the nickname the Booby Trap War. Okay, let's just get over it. If you have to giggle, he said booby trap. Okay, get past it. All right. Anyway, first U.S. soldier ever killed in Vietnam was killed by an explosive device. The Vietnamese learned very early on, it is pointless to confront the American military full on in a conventional battle. We Were Soldiers is a good movie to watch to demonstrate that point. But anyway, so they're not going to. So they're just like, no, we're going to build a tunnel network and we're going to be sneaky and it's going to be about explosive devices. Where'd they get all their stuff from? 90% of all the mines and booby traps were confiscated from the Americans. Americans at one point laid down 30,000 landmines in one area. Yeah, try and see if them getting past this one. Ha ha. And they snuck in at night and like carefully blew the dirt off and carried it away. 10,000 of them carried away, which would later be used to kill American soldiers. A third of every guy that died being on that long marble wall in D.C., 1/3 of those guys were explosive devices, the booby trap things. 1st Marine Division in the second half of 1968, more than half of them, it was not a bullet, it was explosive device. One particular clash, almost 90% of all the guys that died were from explosive devices. And here's the last part, especially the new guys. Why? Because they didn't know where the traps were. So they would just come along and see, oh, what's this? This looks like something. Especially when you come upon, you're on patrol and you got, oh, wow, here's an abandoned fire. Whoa, they just left here. And they might find a guitar. I'm like, can you believe it? Somebody left a guitar here, perfectly good guitar. That guitar is attached to an explosive. Or a Playboy magazine was very popular. The Viet Cong in their tunnel net would watch and carefully observe and pay very close attention to how Americans acted and operated, and they would base their traps based on what they observed. So the Playboy was a very popular one. Anything, a can of rations, oh man, somebody left a can of Vietnamese battle plans, or what appeared to be Vietnamese battle, rolled up. Like, can you believe they left their plans behind? Oh. And the only guys that really could tell what was probably were the guys that had been over there for a couple tours. That grizzled old sergeant with like the scar going down his face, that nobody liked, because he was just so grumpy. Anyway, those were the guys that knew. So you didn't really have a chance. The Army put out a pamphlet like instructing, we've got real problem here with the explosive devices. So here's what to look for, and there was these lists of things to look for. And still, it did not keep. They would keep figuring out new ways based on what the Americans liked or didn't like. Now you can almost begin to see a little satanic thing happening here, because this is exactly what Satan does. Oh, they like that? I've got to figure out a way to work that to my advantage. Oh, they have this desire. I'm going to offer a fake version of that, which will blow up in their face. And it's like a very vivid picture of what happens. What you have to do is trust the one who's been here before and say, okay, this doesn't look like a trap to me. It won't. Okay, it looks like a chair that you can sit down. But you have to trust me on this. And this is what God says to David. When I told you not to do something, and even bonehead Joab picked up on this. When I tell you not to do something, there's a reason. I didn't just throw darts at a board of human pleasures and just figure out some random thing. They're not random. They're connected to someone's suffering. You have got to believe that. And that's what caused David's big meltdown. But we still have troubles, don't we? We still have, but I just don't see what the big deal is. I just don't see. I knew a guy, Ryan, he was a clever guy, and he worked in a corporate field, and he was sick to death of all these extra things he had to do. Hey, we're having a picnic at Marie's house tonight, if you can come. So one day he thought, just in a moment of, I can't go tonight. Why not? So being a clever guy, he's like, my ex is, my daughter is having a birthday party tonight. Oh, I didn't know you had an ex. Yeah, well. And that was it. Like, ooh, that worked out really well. And next time it came, hey, we have a weekend seminar. Oh, my wife's leaving for the weekend. I have custody of my daughter. And he was really getting attached to this fictional daughter because she was getting him out of everything. Anytime he didn't want to do, oh, no, I can't. Your daughter. And to the point where, do you have any pictures of your daughter? And he thought, yeah, that's probably kind of weird that I don't. So he got a 6-year-old picture and put it on his desk. That's my daughter. Not a daughter. And this went on until finally came the day when it all exploded. And someone finally caught him, like, but wait, you said you were with your daughter. Oh. And suddenly with everyone gathering around his desk, yeah, there's not an actual daughter. Well, who's that? picture I got at Walmart. Just, whoa, this is really painful. Yeah, really painful and really, really career-ending. Because you made up this stupid story. But it got me out of some, but it was nice. It worked for a while. Yeah, they always do. They always work for a while, and then suddenly it blows up in your face. He didn't see the wire. Oh, when God said don't lie, you didn't notice that there's a wire connected to something that will blow up in your face. My friend Diane and I grew up together in the same church. She was a few years older than me, but one of the wittiest ladies I've ever known. To this day, I mean, we crack each other up on Facebook. But both of us have experienced the pains of, there's a funny joke pops into the chamber. And you have to ask yourself before it comes out, is this going to do good or is this going to do bad? I do not have a 100% record on that, okay? And your laughter seems to vindicate what I just said. But if you have that gift, it's like, but this is funny. So Mindy was somewhere around her same age. Mindy was like 27 or 28, was having marital troubles. Her husband hadn't been there in weeks, And so Diane walks down the hall and sees there's a classroom, pairs and spares, and there's Mindy, for whatever reason, just standing there looking up at it. And Diane has a funny joke. She goes, are you trying to figure out which one you are? Okay, again. Sometimes it pops in the chamber. Pull it back out. This is not a good one. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth. I stand condemned. I'm tar-stained on this one, okay? But it's something you have to learn. Mindy did not think it was particularly funny. In fact, that was back in the late 80s. Mindy has never, this was the church she grew up in. Her family members still go there. Has never been back to church. Never. But it's a joke. We especially, for some reason with humor, think, but it's a joke. Come on. I was just funning. Come on. It was a gag. Okay. I cut your brake lines. Come on. It was just a... there. So we overglorify. I want to throw it because we overglorify humor, I think, and think there's no responsibility with that. But there is. There is absolutely when souls are at stake. My friend Dan started in high school, and this hits a lot of, you go to high school, we party. This is what we do. It's what kids in America do. We party. We go, we get drunk. And the kids in his youth group are like, Dan, come on, man, you can't. Hey, I'll clean up, man. I'm going to Bible college. Okay, I'll clean it all up. Come on. And so Dan was just this party animal, just loved getting drunk in high school. But he justified, he's like, but it's okay because I'm going to Cincinnati Christian University. So he did do that. And made it through college, was a youth minister, never really quitting the drinking. And finally, it blew up in his face, and he's got a meeting with the elders, and he's going to have to explain, where did this start, Dan? Back in high school. I know the scriptures say don't get drunk, but I thought, come on, it's what we do. How many stupid decisions come upon us because we're like, yeah, but look, this is what we do. It's what college students do. It's what we do. It's what everyone my age is doing. Not everyone. And so that's what happens, and very painful, and Dan had to, oh my gosh, go through some rough years after that, then rehab, then finally, I think last I checked, he's like 20, 30 years clean and sober, so things are going great with him. But I'll tell him you applauded. Okay. There's a church in Cleveland. Very impressed with you, Dan. Anyway, sometimes you can literally see the wire. That not often, but I can think of one thing: a computer mouse. Oh, you can actually see that wire going in there. And so we live in an unprecedented age. I will tell you, things have never been more available to us through the wonder and splendor of the interwebs, I say, dripping with sarcasm. But it's just a click away, yeah, and it's still disobeying God. Jesus said, do not look at another person lustfully. Don't do it. Yeah, but it's just, I know, I think God sympathizes. I know. It's never been more available, ever in the history of humankind, but still. that is going to backfire on you. That is going to raise your expectations. That is going to hurt your future marriage. That is going to sabotage something down the road. You just have to believe me on this. My friend, I'll call him D, but D, great man of God, doing great ministry, and he's married, had kids, and he started this brand new, this fresh new youth outreach thing that was so exciting to all of us, and we're all, oh man, this is going to be great. But Satan, remember how this story started? Satan incited him. So his main administrative assistant was a very good-looking lady. And his wife would say, be careful. I know, we're just having a planning meeting. I know, just be careful, she said to her husband. Yeah, I know. She goes, really, I don't think, the Billy Graham rule, don't be in a room alone with, oh, come on. Really? Nothing's going to happen. You know her. You're friends with her. Okay, all right. And so they would have planning meetings together, and they would close with prayer, and then they would hold hands and close with prayer. And then they would close with a big hug, and then the hug started lasting too long. And Satan's like, this great, exciting new youth venture. And that wire that began there connected to Dee's living room, where horrible enough was to hear his story of explaining to his kids that he cheated on their mother. But when his father-in-law showed up, his father-in-law, the minister, I was in the room when you pledged to my daughter that you would forever be true to him. And he thought, I would give away everything I own, everything I will ever own, to not have been in that room at that time. And I wish I'd seen the connection between spending too much time with another woman that is not my wife, which led to what you would expect it to lead to. Because especially, and I say it's because especially sexual sins, they're not like other sins. They aren't. They start out very sneaky, like no one's getting hurt here. As a matter of fact, I got to say, I think people are feeling good about this. Yeah, no. It will connect. It will connect. And God's like, I can't seem to get through to you guys, especially on the sexual thing. I'm telling you, lives will be damaged if you don't listen to me. The children of your future relationship, your marriage, so on and so, your marriage satisfaction will be damaged by this if you will just believe. My friend Reese was over in, fought in Vietnam. I brought him in for my history class when I taught history. And he kept he didn't tell any of the good, juicy stories, because his wife had told me this story, and I couldn't seem to, it was too personal. He wouldn't tell it to the class, but I later got the details from him. He said, yeah, well, I was only there like 2 weeks. He said, picture how frightening it is to be 18 years old, you just graduated, and suddenly you're flown across the world, and you get out of a helicopter, like scared to death, and immediately the sergeant's screaming at you, yelling at people, yelling, get over here, profanity, get the profane, on and on. And he said for 2 weeks, so him and his buddy, who's also brand new, they're like trying to figure things out, and they go to sit down, get over there, what's the matter? He's like, wow, what is this? He's just doing this to mess with us, man. He's like yelling at us about everything, that stupid, cranky sergeant who's been here for a while. He's like, just yell. And so him and his buddy, he's like, hey, Reese, you and Carter, you go do a parole around the perimeter. I'm just mentioning random Vietnam terms I've picked up from movies. So they're like, yeah, so they're doing this patrol around the perimeter. And they're just, the whole time, man, I can't believe that stupid sergeant. Man, he's going to get his one day. I can't believe it. I can't believe what he said to you, man, that was unreasonable. I know. How about when he yelled? Yeah, that was something. And as they're talking out on the path ahead, there was a Coke can. Now, you know what you do. If there's a Coke can in the path and you're an American, you have to kick the Coke can. You have to. It's like some local ordinance. You just have to kick the Coke can. So as they're talking along, they're like, oh, it was over to, and Reese sees out of the corner of his eye the Coke can, and something not in time, he starts to, like slow-mo, no, and his brother just goes, and the second, next thing he knows, he's knocked backwards. Loses wakes up on the side of the path, like, what happened? And he looks up to find there's no parts left of his buddy. bits and pieces. Like, wow, that's what that sergeant was talking about. Oh. And he said he was changed after that. He went back to, came back by himself, had to give the full report. He said, traumatized, obviously, to see someone blown up next to you. That would be legitimate trauma. But he said also now, he had a new appreciation for that sergeant. Like, yes, Sergeant, so this would be okay? Yeah, go ahead, you can do that. Okay. He stuck close to that grizzled sergeant and listened to everything. Yeah, I can sort through, I can put up with the profanity. Just let me know. I trust that you know things, the hidden wires. And that's the kind of trust God is hoping for all of us. Like, do you really have to have a friend blow up next to you? Do you have to do that? Or can you just trust that I know? When I said don't do that, that means there is a wire. Whether you see it or not, there is a wire. It will explode. People will get hurt. Can you trust me on this point? David didn't. David suffered big. Not as much as the 70,000, I suppose. But this is what happens when humans say to the mighty brain of the universe, I just don't see what the big deal is. Sounds kind of pathetic, doesn't it? But here's the good news. Here's the good news. First of all, with sledgehammer bluntness, let me, any last slides? Okay, here we go. Listen well to the more experienced, and then I piece it all together in this last slide, which is the next one after this one. There it is. So sins equal wired minds, right? Oh, thank you, I misspelled it. Wired minds, that's sins. And then the Bible is the booby trap manual, and God only knows. Nod to the Beach Boys. God's the only one that sees those wires. And the good news this morning, if you feel crappy about yourself, as I do often when I think about the stupid mistakes I've made by just not trusting God, we jump from Old Testament now with fresh legs into the New Testament and realize all of us have made the bonehead mistakes. All of us have hurt people. All of us have mistrusted God, but there's good news. There's a clean soul waiting for you. Through the blood of Jesus, not because I earned it or because I was good enough, just because. And that's why we partake of communion at this time, because we celebrate clean, bleached Clorox soul, smelling, as the scriptures say, fragrant in the nostrils of God. Yeah, but I've made some mistakes. I know, but I'm going to forget them. That's what we celebrate. Let's do that now.